Welcome to Tough Conversations with David Wood, where play meets depth. We help teams and high-performing leaders like you to master your tough conversations so you succeed in your career and in your life. When we avoid tough conversations, we stay small. Teams stay disengaged, conflicted, and ultimately end up quitting. When we lean in and master our tough conversations, they become the defining moments that literally shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. So let's dive in and master your next tough conversation so you can be the leader that you would follow. Let's play. Welcome, high performers. This is an unusual episode. Nancy Moonstarr from A Man's Guide to Intimacy, the podcast, reached out to me and said, I love how you show up on podcast. I really appreciate what you're teaching, and would you be willing to be a guest on my podcast? Now, I haven't spoken or talked about man-woman dynamics for some time. I don't consider myself a relationship expert or a marriage expert. I'm a communications expert. But of course, relationships require communication. And at one time, I did actually write a book, two books about man-woman dynamics. And it's fun for me. Nancy had some amazing questions like, is there a place for gender roles? You know, traditional roles or different roles. And we didn't directly address the Me Too movement, but we kind of looked at the landscape in today's society. How does a man show up? How does a man generate intimacy? And she asked me this amazing question: how can a man invite his woman to surrender? So I loved this so much that I decided to publish it on my own podcast. I hope you get a lot out of it, and I'd love you to send me any questions or comments. Let's dive into it with Nancy Moonstarr.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nancy Moonstarr, psychologist who's creating this show, A Man's Guide to Intimacy. I'm welcoming a very special coach and guest speaker who is an expert at difficult, deep conversations, of which this topic is about. He has coached a gazillion people. He's been #1 coach by Google. He's been an actuary for top Fortune 500 companies. He's overcome challenges in his own life, and he is transformational in his approach. So he uses all these difficult things to grow and become the biggest version of yourself, and he's done that with himself. I welcome David Wood.
Thank you, Nancy. That's a very warm welcome. I feel wanted here, and that feels good. Thank you.
Very much so. So I'm curious what it was that drew you so quickly to saying you would join in and be interviewed on this series.
It was A Man's Guide to Intimacy as a title. I'm a big fan of intimacy. I've spent the first 25 years of my life, I didn't know much about it. The last 25 years, I've been focused a lot on how to have deeper connections with people, which actually helps business results as well as life results. And I'm particularly interested in men's work. I just talked to a friend yesterday, and we were talking about how men need to do their own work and actually get a lot of our needs met from other men so that we're not so hungry for the women in our lives. And the timing of that conversation was interesting because I've just been invited last week to join a men's group. And I said, yes. I said, I'll come along and check it out. So I'm interested in that whole field of how men can connect more deeply to themselves and to everyone else in their life, which includes their partner.
What do you think makes it more difficult for men to do the self-work and do this thing we're talking about?
Well, I don't know anything about biology, so I don't know if there's something different about our brains, but I know that my upbringing was different, and the things that I was told as a kid and what was modeled for me, if you see if a woman cries, she's almost expected to do that. But if a man cries in Australia, there was a lot of, we'll just toughen up. And, I think a lot of kids have probably heard from their parents, I'll give you something to cry about
Mm.
if you keep crying. But I imagine it's even more so for men. There's an image of, I need to be tough. I need to get out there and kill the bear. And I didn't even know what I was feeling. I think until I was 40, I might know I'm feeling bad or I'm feeling good. That's it. So for me to even first reveal to myself what's happening was a big deal. And then secondly, am I willing to reveal that to my partner? I think those are the two big questions. So I wasn't trained. I actually think most humans are not well trained in both of those things. But for a man, it's culturally, it has been culturally less acceptable. But I think that's shifting. And if you and I have anything to say about it, it'll shift quicker.
So do you think and what would be the difference between the enculturation from Australia to US or to other cultures?
I was told 20 years ago that Australia's about 20 years behind the US in a lot of things. That we're behind the US in some good things, and we're behind the US in some bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in other ways, I think Australia's ahead of the US. But one area where they suggested we were behind was in how we treat women and the equality of women and the entrenched misogyny, I think, is this is discrimination. US has been doing better than Australia in terms of how do we treat women with respect and how do we stop treating women as less than. And we still have a long way to go in the US, but I think Australia's got a little bit further. It's just more culturally acceptable that, like we have a joke in Australia, men in the front, women and dogs in the back. We would say that, and it was ha ha and whatever. Now I bet the women weren't laughing about it really on the inside as much, but that was kind of like it's okay to say that in Australia.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I thought, it was almost a joke, but wow.
Well, it is a joke, but it's not a very nice joke, particularly since women are already treated as less than. If they weren't, then it might be funny. Just like you can joke about a man, you could say that about a man because men have the power generally. So you can take shots at men, but it's not okay to take shots at women anymore in the US because we recognize that that's not very cool. Because they are discriminated against, so you can't do it. You still take jokes at men.
Okay. So I'm going to read something from a book. It's a fun book. See if you might be able to guess where it's from. It's from sort of a fairy tale. Why don't you pick on somebody your own size instead of bothering the lady? Tramp shouted at the pack of dogs. Tramp fought like a tiger, and when he was through, those bullies couldn't run away fast enough. Lady thanked Tramp for rescuing her. Then she told him all about her troubles. What's your reaction to that? You're talking about male role here, and you're talking about conditioning, and I just thought of that little clip from. First of all, you know what I was reading from?
Lady and the Tramp. My reaction is that I think this points towards a useful and interesting and desirable model that men and women can profit from. So, but first let's talk about another model. Like another model is we're all the same. There are no differences. And in our relationship, the man and the woman are going to relate like that. We're humans. I think there are more fun models that can be used where we can take advantages of some of the differences in the masculine and feminine polarity. Now, I don't mean man-woman polarity. I mean masculine, feminine. Some women have more masculine than feminine, and some men have more feminine than masculine. But in my world, it's fun if a woman says, yeah, I'd like you to open the door for me, that'd be nice. And if there's a burglar in the house, I'd like you to go and handle it, if that's okay with you.
Mhm.
And I might take on some more feminine roles, like having the house look really beautiful and reminding us to flow and feel more of our emotions. And I like that. That's fun for me. I think where it becomes unfun is if people are pigeonholed and a woman is expected that she's going to clean the house and she's going to look after the kid without any conversation about it. Or if the man is expected that he's not going to show his emotions, or he's going to be the breadwinner, and it's not talked about and it's not consciously decided. So that's when the roles, I think, become counterproductive and unfun. But if you can choose your own roles, as a woman, I want to do all this kind of stuff. And as a man, I want to do all this kind of stuff, and we can give to each other in that way, which is what I heard in that story.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, to me, it connects with chivalry. And
Yeah.
yeah, tell me a little bit about where you see that in building intimacy for men. Where is the place for that? What is that exactly? And
Well, there's that old thing that intimacy, if you slow down the word, is into me you see.
Mhm,
So I think intimacy is largely about truth telling. And I just went and looked up speaktruth.com to see if I knew it wouldn't be available, but I talk about tough conversations, and I've realized recently that a sexier way to say that is simply speak your truth and
mhm,
then stick around to listen to the reaction. And
mhm.
that's a tough conversation. So I forgot the question I was answering.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just
Oh
really
yeah,
following.
no, I remember now, but I just accidentally modeled what I'm talking about. That instead of trying to fake it, I told you, I
Mm,
forget the question I was answering.
mhm,
So I think, how this shows up, how these models or these roles show up for intimacy is speak your truth. As a woman, I would like you to first reveal your truth to yourself and realize, oh, I want this. Here's how I want to show up in relationship. And here's how I'd love my man to show up in relationship. And
mm,
as you speak that truth, um, and it gets received, then you have intimacy. Same for a man. What are the things that are not working for you in a relationship? Can you find an artful way to bring those up? What are your desires? How do you want to show up? How would you like your partner to show up? And as you're willing to reveal that and it can be heard by your partner, then you've got intimacy. Even if your partner doesn't agree. Let's say you want something in the bedroom and you find an artful way to bring it up. If your partner says, no way am I doing that, but you get to share it and your partner understands you, like, oh, I can totally get why you'd want that. I got some desires too, we can talk about too. I'm not going to do it, but I'm glad you told me. That you're closer. You don't actually need the result you're looking for to have intimacy.
mm.
I think intimacy comes from the sharing and revealing of yourself and having it being received.
So what's the difficulty in the bedroom for the guy? What is it that he finds maybe most difficult to address and have that tough conversation?
Wow. Well, I don't know for men in general, but I can talk about for myself. Um,
Please.
I think one thing for me is performance anxiety. Like, am I going to perform? And particularly for for women, if they're not fully aroused, it doesn't make as much of a difference as if the guy isn't erect. And
Mm.
you just look at a guy and you can tell he's not ready for sex. So there's more performance anxiety sometimes there. And particularly, I've always found that often I'm great until it comes time to put the condom on. And then it's like, oh my God, and there's embarrassment, and then I lose the erection, and all of that. So I found that very difficult in my early years, and now it's a lot easier because I've learned how to talk about it. and
Mm.
say, all right, if this happens, doesn't necessarily mean I'm not into you, but this is something that often happens the first few times with a condom. And then after the first time that it's successful, it's not a problem. I've learned how to share that.
Wow. Thank you.
So that's one issue. And here's another thing that has been an issue for me. I don't know if other guys have this, but sometimes I worry, like if we're going to have a date, I know we're switching the roles here, but I worry about expectations. See, I often say to a date, look, I don't have any expectation. There's no requirement for us to be sexual. And also I want you to know it's not guaranteed. I never know how my body's going to react or how I'm going to feel. I might be really turned on. I might not be turned on. So what do you say? We flow with it and see how we both feel. And if we're both a yes to something, we'll do that. Try and take the pressure off. But again, it's taken me a long time to realize that I'm not a sure thing. And I might have desires, but I don't think I have any, big expectations about the other person. So those are two issues for me. And I've learned how to speak about them, but I still get nervous about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. So I'm going to go back to a point, a little bit I read. So protecting a woman, and how does that show up? And I thought I heard you say something about opening a door. And so what does that mean to protect, take care of? And do women need that? And how much of that do they need? And then my mind kind of goes to, are women always kind of carrying around a lot that they need, sort of this assistance so they can feel free, like Lady did, like, now I can tell you about my troubles. And
Huh. Okay, I think I heard three questions in there. So firstly, for people who are listening to this, if you can't see the video, my face is lit up hearing this question. I know that I feel emotional. And I think what's happening is it touches in a part of me that I love to be the protector.
mm, mm,
And I don't say that, I don't imply that other men should feel like that, because they may not. But it's inherent in me. If a woman's being threatened, or they like I've gone to sex clubs, not for a while, but I used to go to like sex parties and sex clubs, and I'd be there with a really beautiful woman, and she might be vulnerable and exposed, and all the guys are like trying to get a piece of her. I'm like a bouncer. I will throw myself between her and anyone else, and I like being trusted, and I like being able to give her that space and that protection. So I have that desire, and it's fulfilling for me. And in this day and age, and because of, I think, how women have been treated and disempowered and treated as weak, for some women, what they want is to be treated as an equal and to be treated as someone powerful. So in this day and age, I like to check when I remember and check in. I was at a conference recently with a good buddy of mine. He was running it, and he had a team dinner. And he said,
a what dinner?
a team dinner for the team. Yeah.
Got
And he said, if the ladies are willing, we'd like you to go first in getting your food. I thought that was artfully done. He didn't just assume. He said, if you're willing, we would like that. So for any women who are like, don't treat me as like I need special treatment. I've got a friend who hates anyone treating her like she needs to be cared for, because it triggers a part of her that wants to be seen as powerful. So I don't assume. If a woman wants that, let's talk about it, and I can give her that. And if she doesn't want that, she's probably not going to end up being my partner, because I enjoy the polarity. I love it when a woman feels relaxed enough and trusts me enough that she can surrender to my direction. That's really fulfilling for me. But I don't assume that every woman's going to want that. Are you familiar with the David Data 3 stages?
No, tell me a little bit.
Oh, Oh, this is huge. I'd say this was a life changer for me. So these three stages are wonderful so that each of us can work out where we are. The first stage is red-necked men and submissive housewives. Let's go back to the 50s, where women should be seen and not heard. They're told what to do, and the guys are pretty obnoxious. They might have even been wife beaters, who knows? But that's first stage. And then society went, wait a minute, this is not cool. So the women started to become more and more independent and like, I need to prove my worth. And some of them went over the top to become ball busting women in the corporate world, which can be powerful, but then they weren't always able to switch off and relax into the feminine. They just became more masculine. And on the flip side, you've got the men going into the forest and playing guitar and maybe dancing and smoking marijuana, which is a very feminine practice, and growing their hair long. And unfortunately, it's just great. They get in touch with their feelings and they're like, I hear you. Do you hear me? But what you got was spineless spiritual wimps. So in the second stage, it's an advancement. You've got women who are more independent and men who are more in touch with their feelings, but you can get ball-busting women who can't feel their heart, and spineless spiritual wimps who can't stand up and go and handle a burglar or be a man when it's needed. So he talks about third stage, which seems to be the holy grail, where a woman realizes her power. She's able to think in a linear fashion and to be in control and manage a team of people and do anything a man can do. And she places a high value on opening her heart and flowing and feeling and surrendering when she finds a man worthy and able to hold that container. And similarly, a man, he can feel his feelings. He has an open heart. And if a burglar comes into the house and he needed to kill to defend his family, he can do that too. So he has a strong, I think Brene Brown says, strong back, soft front. So I really took, and David Data's got a book for men. It's called Way of the Superior Man, which is a very provocative title. I loved that book. And I think almost every woman I've met has loved that book. She's like, yes, I want this. I want men like this. And the one for women specifically, I think is called Dear Lover. And I haven't read that.
Wow, thank you. That was really helpful. It kind of reminded me of my worst bosses. Almost always were women. They couldn't say, you make me look bad because you're so good, for example. There was jealousy. They couldn't stop and pay attention to intuition. And so I would experience being hammered and etc.
Yeah. I think we want the best of both worlds, and we can have it. And for a man, the men that I respect are the ones that can cry. They're not falling apart. They might be crying and sobbing as they release emotion, but they're still present. And again, if a burglar was in the house, they could respond, but they're willing to feel all those feelings. And they're also willing to say to their woman, no. If she's doing something that's not serving her in the world, he can draw a line and say, hey, that's not okay. It's not like, oh, I hear you. Do you hear me? And whatever. Sometimes I know a group of people that say, give the woman everything. It works better if you give the woman everything she wants. 90% of the time. They believe that 10% of the time a woman wants a man to be able to draw a line and say, you don't want a doormat. So I think we can have the best of both worlds, feeling men with open hearts who can also do some of the tough work that's required that a woman may not want to do.
So I'm going to go back to a word I heard you mention a couple times, surrender, and a woman surrendering to you. And what does that mean to you, to a man, and how can he, a man, men on these shows, invite more of that?
Ooh, wow. All right, two big questions. We'll see what comes out. So the first one, what does that mean to me, or what does that look like?
Mhm.
Um, well, the first thing that comes up is physically. If I'm touching a woman and she enjoys my touch and relaxes, which allows her to enjoy even more touch, it relaxes into a space of trust, I can feel that.
Mm.
And I can respond. And, you know, sexually, I'm a space holder. And I've done a lot of BDSM, bondage domination stuff as well. I've done workshops, I've trained in it.
Mm.
And it really speaks to what we've been talking about with the masculine feminine polarity and surrender. It's basically one person is in charge and the other person's job is to surrender. So it's great for man-woman dynamics.
Mm.
And I find, I'm wondering how honest I'm going to be here. I think I'm going to be pretty honest. Like, for example, if I'm having sex with a woman and she's fully surrendered, she may not be tracking her noise levels or how the neighbors are, or if someone's going to call the police or something like that, because she's the river that's flowing.
Mm.
And that's her job, should she want to take on that surrendered feminine role, is to trust me to hold that space. Now, I am tracking that. I am aware of, like, with the neighbors, is this too much or whatever? Does she need water? Whatever. Like, there's part of me that's present. The role of a fun role for the masculine is to be the riverbanks, so she can flow and rage and do whatever she does, and he's holding that space.
Mm.
So that's an example sexually and physically in terms of touch. But it could show up too. It might show up in another way in terms of, if she's not sure, doesn't have a clear desire of what we're going to do for the evening, she might want me to choose and provide direction. Sometimes women want that. They just like, I just want the guy to like, or at least to have an idea. And so I might run a menu past her. Well, here are 3 things that I'm thinking of.
Mm.
And this way she gets me to be providing direction, but she still gets to choose.
Mm.
So those are just a couple of things that come to mind with surrender. And your next question was, what was your next question? That was a good one.
It's how to invite that. So you've started in on that, and you also go ahead.
Yeah. Wow.
Because you mentioned sort of well, you mentioned touch. So we've got non-sexual touch, sensual, sexual, So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, or
Well, talk about inviting. I think the more a man can generate trust and be trustworthy, the more a woman can relax and trust his guidance. And I had a date with a woman once who had she's a podcast host, and she had a blog, and she wrote an article after our date called 8 Ways He Had Me Trust Him. It was quite extraordinary. One way that I think that I generate trust is by checking in and asking. So for example, let's say I'm sitting with someone and we're having a good time, and it seems, and I kind of want to put my hand on her leg. This is a bit of a catch-22, because again, in this day and age, a lot of people, women and men, want to be asked, because if you just assume, then how are they going to trust you, particularly if you got it wrong? But I do believe a lot of women want a man to feel in and to be a mind reader and to just know, like, he knew that I was ready for that. So it's a bit tricky, But you got to be careful in this day and age. So I tend to err on the side of asking. And I'll be like, I might raise my hand and put it close to her leg and say, may I put my hand on your knee? And then I'm listening for an answer, but I'm also watching for an answer. And if there's any hesitation, I might be like, not yet, let's leave it. If I find that I've put my hand on her knee, like we're having a great talk and we're close to each other and it just seems natural, I might have an afterthought. Wait a minute. Or I might have an intuition. Wait a minute. Just with any doubt, it's worth asking. Hey, is my hand okay on your knee? Or is it still okay here? And I almost always find that women appreciate that. They're like, thank you for checking in. And I think I can almost feel her relax a little bit more. This guy's got attention on me. This guy wants to know if this is okay. This guy wants me to have a good time. He's not just pursuing his own agenda.
I really like that. And I heard how sensitive you are. And I heard you say listening and watching because, because there's sort of a influence women aren't taught to really say what they want. And it's still, I mean, guys have some of this too, and so there can be, I'm supposed to be nice and I'm good, or yes, or okay, or
and I don't want to put her in the awkward position of having to say no, because that could feel awkward. So I might read a no and say, let's wait on that. And I'm excited about this concept of listening because I think for the first 25 years of my life, I didn't really know much about it. And then I was lucky enough to discover some people who were very good at it, and they trained me, and I'm still a student of this. But I think, you're listening when you ask, can I put my hand in your leg? But during sex as well, and this is speaking to a question, how do you invite surrender? It's a dance. And you're constantly listening. If I'm just with my own sensations and lost in my own sensations, which is what I want for a woman, then I'm not listening to her body. But if I'm constantly got those ears open, let's imagine you've got ears all over your body and you're constantly listening, then you might be kissing passionately, but I'm constantly putting out feelers for like, is this what's wanted? And if I'm not sure, pull back a little bit and check. And then she might come towards me and start kissing me stronger. I'm like, all right, we're in the right zone here.
So how do you check?
Pardon?
How do you check?
Well, you can check partly by taking a step back. You can check by taking your hand off her leg or kissing more gently, slowing down. And then waiting. Sometimes it's really clear. She's giving you signals, she's making sounds and whatever. It's like, no, this is exactly what's wanted. But then when you have any doubt, what a great time to either ask verbally or just back off a little bit. And I don't know exactly how I developed this radar, but I'm so grateful for it. There might be, might be time I'm having intercourse and, strong thrust, and then the thought will just flick through my head. Wait a minute. I can't tell if this is exactly what she's wanted. Let's not just assume that what women want are really hard thrusts. So I'll slow down and give her a chance to show some signals. And I think this is another way that we can invite surrender as men, by listening and by putting a lot of attention on a woman, can have her realize, oh, wait, this is a safe space. This guy has got me. This guy's got his attention on me. These are my theories, right? I don't pretend to be a guru on this, and I'm still learning. I'm still a student, and I still make mistakes for sure. I'm sharing some of the things that I'm excited about that I've found seem to work well for me.
Oh, I like what I'm hearing, and this is very helpful because I get questions from men, how do I get more of this? How do I have more body intimacy, sex? And what do I do? What about men who've had a period of time where their beloved, their wife or whoever isn't responding, isn't showing interest, isn't engaging? What what then?
Yeah. I try not to speak in universal truths, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it now. In that case, what she's wanting is not sex primarily. I say she's wanting attention. And
Mm,
attention will show the guy what she's wanting. And there's a joke, if you want, there's a joke from women where they say, the foreplay I want is cleaning the house,
mm,
right? Now, that I don't think that's universal truth, but she might be wanting the man to do more around the house. And by him doing that, if that's the case, he's showing that he cares about what she wants. And it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of true. Now, if let's say I'm wanting sex from my partner and she's not responding or she's not wanting it, well, maybe I could get curious about her. All right, I've got this desire. That's fine. I can enjoy that. I can share the desire. I have that. But what do you want right now? What's
mm,
going on for you? Is there
mm,
something you want to talk about? Is there something in between us that needs resolving? Is there something I'm not giving you that I could give you right now, which might be cleaning the house, it might be cooking a meal or something like that? I think that's a great place to start because it gives you intimacy. It
mm,
may not get you sex that night or immediately, but you're going to be closer with your partner. And I would also want to know, if I have a desire to have more sex, I'd want to know, is there something that might be fun for her that'd be in the direction of that? Maybe
mm,
we're not going to have intercourse. Maybe we're not going to get naked. Maybe we're not going to do anything that leads towards that. If she's feeling shy about that, maybe we could give each other foot rubs. See, most people like pleasure.
mm.
They really do. It's just, if I'm a woman, I may not want to, can I say fuck on this? Or we can't
Yeah,
say it. All right. I
yeah.
may not want to fuck for various reasons, but I still like pleasure. I don't want to feel obligated that I'm going to have to put out. But if I'm offered a foot rub and it really is honestly non-reciprocal, I might want that.
Mm,
I might be happy to give my man a shoulder rub, but I'm just not feeling sexual. Then we can go to a second stage, which I keep talking about this group. I should give them a name. The Moore House, or it used to be Moore University, is an incredible trainer of man-woman
mm,
stuff. And they taught me that most people like pleasure. And if a woman knew she wasn't on the hook to have to reciprocate or fuck, she might actually say yes to receiving pleasure.
mm,
So I trained with them on how to, on manual stimulation, how to use my hands to give a woman pleasure. And she might keep her clothes on largely, right? Stay largely dressed. And it's like, I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I'm just going to do what feels good to your body. And I'm going to ask you questions and I'm going to listen and I'm going to give you pleasure. And you're not going to give me anything afterwards. If you want to do me tomorrow, okay. But the same day, no. Wow.
oh,
What a concept.
yes, it was rather new in recent years for me to understand you could have such pleasure with clothes on, for example.
Yeah. And you might find if you're starting to, have that sexy time, it might lead to her having a desire for more. I've done it with women and she's like, I want you to penetrate me now. So there's the foot rub is a nice way to lead into just having connection and touch. And then you can see, all right, would one of us like some manual stimulation? And we
Mhm.
could do that with no strings attached. I find that's pretty safe. And that can start to develop the connection and the intimacy. And then maybe that'll lead to intercourse and she might have a desire for that, or maybe not. But you can have a lot of time, a lot of good times with manual stimulation and putting attention on your partner.
So I like that. Thank you. So going back, let's get back a little bit. You're describing finding out what she really wants, and then you're also talking about pleasure. So there were two directions we could go here.
Yep.
What
Well,
is,
I'm glad that you delineated those. That's right. Two separate conversations.
okay. So what do you think is tough for a guy? Because it means he's really got to get off his goal directedness, or we're going to have penetration, or
Yeah. Yeah.
what is it that's, yeah, what challenges a guy in that? And of course, as a psychologist, I, know some of these conversations, but let me hear from you.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, I think this is beyond sex. So it's not just about intercourse. I think for me in general, I have trouble letting go of my own desires and goals and getting curious about another person.
Mm,
And then let's go beyond men. I think it's a human thing in general for us to be so self-focused. And the word curiosity is such a powerful word because that's the word, that's the doorway into someone else's world. And it's hard for me. It's an afterthought, but I'll take it. I'll take the afterthoughts and then I get quicker and quicker at getting curious. But let's bring it back to just sex. All right, I'm horny, I'm turned on, I want sex with my partner. I've also got all this social conditioning that I believe that a man should be fucking a lot. Um, Penetration is the way to have sex. We're conditioned with that as well. And
mhm,
also, maybe this is more of a feminine thought, but is my relationship in trouble if we're not regularly fucking and having hot, passionate sex? I've worried about that, and I've had partners worry about that.
mhm, mm,
So there's all that built up, and I need to notice that, hopefully, maybe by listening to a podcast like this and go, oh, yeah, I have all this. Can I share it with my partner and have it be heard? Can I just share my experience? I'm not saying we have to fuck or anything. I just want to share what it's like as a guy. You know, I want sex, I want this and whatever, and talk about it. And then find out what it's like from her point of view. What's it like for you to have me horny all the time and wanting to fuck?
mm,
What's that like? And then I just really listen. There might occur as pressure. She might like that you have desire.
mhm.
Um, this is intimacy, is talking about what it is. Then maybe you can find some solutions. I mean, I think mutual masturbation is one of the most fun games two people can play.
Mm,
It's like, I know my body, you know your body. Let's lie next to each other and pleasure each other. Maybe we're going to make out a little bit.
mhm,
You might find that's a solution, or I'm just going to masturbate and you're going to watch, or vice versa, or I'll stimulate you. Or maybe we'll have a makeout date that's not going to lead to sex. We set it up in advance. I, I'm a coach and I'm a logical guy, so I can think of all sorts of games
mm.
that we can come up with that don't involve fucking. And if she's not interested in any of those, then I've still got masturbation. I can still get myself off and find ways to have a good time with my partner.
So let me just get clarity for myself and listeners. So mutual masturbation can be pleasurable, can be connecting, and define that. That is,
Define that. I'm rubbing myself, she's rubbing herself. We're probably lying next to each other, but it doesn't have to be. We'd be across the room. We might agree that there's no contact. We're just going to have this experience together. Or we might end up making out, or it just dissolves into us helping each other. And then I've
mhm,
done that. I did that with a friend. We'd never had any sex or made out before. And I suggested this idea. And after about 10, 15 minutes, we were both wanting sex.
mm,
And
mm.
we did, and it was great. We couldn't have started there because we didn't feel it.
And so,
So find a common place where you can start, which again might be back rubs, or it might be cuddling. She might want 20 minutes of cuddling that's guaranteed no sex.
mm.
The
So,
meta comment is get curious and talk about both of feelings on both sides. That's the win. If you end up having sex, that's great. But if not, at least you're starting with intimacy.
I like the word curious. I like the tone. I like the invitingness. It's much more open than, well, why that, or why aren't you respond, or what am I doing? You know, it's got a very nice invitingness to it. So I like that. Now, I want to ask you to define hand sex, because I think you were talking about that. Mutual masturbation can go into hand, or is it one? Where do they
Yeah,
overlap?
manual stimulation. So, two organizations I know of that teach this. One is One Taste, which bit controversial, that organization, but they taught how to, one person would lie down, usually the woman, but doesn't have to be. Clothes are mostly on, maybe the pants come off, and a timer is set,
Mm.
um, which is wonderful. You set a timer so that each person isn't thinking, oh, I need to stop this at some point, or when is it going to stop? Is he still interested and whatever? No, we know it's going to be 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It's a
Mm.
wonderful thing to do. Get some lube, get a towel ready, get some pillows, position her legs. If it's the woman, get her comfortable, see if she wants any water. If you're really going to go to town, you might put on some music that you know she likes. Maybe get her favorite drink ready. It's a really just put some great attention on your partner. And then I'm pausing because I'm thinking like how much detail to go into. And then you'll start touching. You might stroke different parts of her body and then check if she wants you to touch her pussy. Um, or you might agree, we're just going to start there, and you're listening. You're listening with your hands, you're listening with the body language, and you can actually, there's something called the training cycle, which I got from the Morehouse.
Mm.
Their website, by the way, can I give them a plug?
Mm.
Yeah, their website is LafayetteMorehouse.com. And I did courses with them and trained in this. And you can ask great questions that have yes or no answers. This is super important. Never ask your partner, does this feel good? Never ask that question. Kind of puts them on the spot.
Mm.
You ask a question. It might be something like, "Would you like lighter touch?"
Mm.
And then you thank them, whatever the answer. It's like, yes, no, I don't know, thank you. And then you can keep going. Would you like lighter touch? You're going to have to keep asking until you get to that point. And then then when she says no, or he says no, would you like firmer touch? You get till you get the sweet spot. And then you might be like, would you like circles? Would you like penetration now? Or you can do it and see how it feels. You can kind of test it out. But I think it's great to have a research date. Let's find out about your body and what's good. And I'm going to ask these questions. And all you've got to do is relax and say yes, no, yes, no. And if you want, you can ask as well. There's another cycle for how you train from the bottom. Train someone to give you what you want.
Mm.
That might be another podcast episode.
Well, let me go back. So you introduced this with sort of an explanation of what not to say or how not to structure it versus how to structure this. Could you restate that?
Yeah, don't ask, does this feel good? It doesn't really give you information. They're kind of expected to say yes. I would ask for something, ask for a change. Would you like more pressure? Would you like me to go faster? I mean, how many times you've been lying there, ladies, and it's too fast, right? It's awkward to say, whoa, sailor, slow down. But if he's asking you, would you like slower strokes? Would you, with my hand or my penis or whatever, and keeps asking until you get that exact speed. Now you can relax even more and feel even more. So this is called the training cycle. It's a way to find out what your partner wants without them having to get into their head and speak up a lot.
Nice. That's very helpful. So, what's the one you said could be a future podcast? I really want to hear something on that, please.
Oh, well, yeah, I was talking about the train. So this is the training cycle I've given a bit about when you're the one delivering the pleasure and you want to use a cycle to find out information. But there's another cycle that you can use from the bottom. If you're the one receiving, there's a nice training cycle, and it's very simple. You find something right, like, I love that you're putting so much attention on me. Something you honestly find right. So you appreciate them. Then you ask for one small thing they can definitely do. Would you stroke a little faster? And then they do it and you say, thank you. That's it. It's also known as an appreciation sandwich. This is something great you're doing, right? You're winning in my eyes. Would you stroke a little faster, or would you try a little lighter, or would you try some penetration, or I'd like some pressure on my clitoris. Would you try that?
Mm.
Thank you. That feels much better. And then you rinse and repeat. You can keep going. That's a training cycle from the bottom.
Those are wonderful. So how does a guy bring this into his relationship? What are some just sort of initial things he can do
Great,
today?
great. Yeah, well, it could be, hey, you know, it's kind of expected in society. I was listening to this podcast and they say how it's expected in society that everything's reciprocal and we're like pleasuring each other at the same time. And they suggested that you can have a lot of fun if two people put their attention on one person's pleasure.
Mm.
As a whole new model. And it can lead to sex, or it can be agreed it doesn't lead to sex. And it's timed. Seems a bit weird, seems a bit clinical, but apparently it can be a lot of fun. And so I'm interested in trying it out. Do you want to try it out? We'll set a timer for 30 minutes. And I'm thinking I would do you first. And all you got to do is relax and feel your body. You can give me any direction if you want, or you can just relax. And I think it'd be a pretty fun date. What do you say?
Mm. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, I got to warn you guys. It can be hard for any human um, to receive, and
Mm.
particularly after a lifetime of women having to put out and having to focus on what the guy wants and believing if it's hard, she's got to do something about it, about his erection. It might be a real game changer and hard for her to believe that you would really do it. I know when my partner said, well, let me do you. Oh, so confronting to,
Mm.
to actually think about relaxing and letting her pleasure me and me doing nothing and trusting that she really wanted to brought up all sorts of stuff. So just bear in mind, you might face some resistance, but I have faith in you to be able to seduce her into receiving pleasure. Just find some fun ways that she could do it. You might even say, we'll do it as a foot rub, non-sexual.
Mm.
But it can be a real game changer. I know communities of people, they got right into this. They call it a due date, or they call it orgasmic meditation. And they say, you know, I would do it with someone I would hug, because it's not about sex. It's not going to lead to sex. It's just I'm willing to receive pleasure. I'm not saying people have got to go that far, but it can be a fun tool to add, particularly if sex isn't happening. I
Mm.
believe this is a way to break it down into smaller steps where you can communicate and get back to more intimacy.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. So, what other things are not spoken or we haven't covered or touched on that might be helpful to?
I notice when you say that and hearing that, I just feel so happy with what we've covered. I
Mm.
feel like, because I talk about tough conversations and speaking truth a lot. And I also talk about business success. And I've done a lot of training in man-woman dynamics. And I'm such a fan of intimacy. So I just love that you've taken us there to all these great places I don't normally get to talk about. There's nothing that's coming up for me as missing.
Okay, good.
I would just recap by saying it's scary to speak truth. Firstly, most of us don't know what our own truth is, because the mind doesn't just lay it out on a platter. Oh, here's your truth. We just know we might want more. We might not even be clear what that is, or something might be bugging us. And relationships are a great training ground to get out a piece of paper and a pen and say, all right, if I was 100% truthful, what are some desires I haven't communicated?
Mm.
What are some things that bug me
Mhm.
or that I'm concerned about in our relationship that I haven't communicated? It doesn't mean writing them down doesn't commit you to sharing them. It's just a first step for you to start to reveal your truth to yourself. Journaling's good too, I think, for this, and talking to a coach or a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've got that, you might say to your partner, hey, this guy on this podcast was suggesting a special kind of date where we get together and we share a little deeper than what we normally do. We make a list with each other, and then we take turns. We might even light a candle, or we might have a talking stick or something. And then one person's going to share for about 10, 15 minutes. Then the other person has a chance to share impact. All right, hearing that, I feel all this impact. And you might go back and forth for a while. Then you switch. And then it's your partner's turn, and they just share, and you just listen. It's so important. You can't say a thing like, oh yeah, me too. No, you don't get to do that. You're a therapist. I know I'm preaching to the choir.
No, we need this out there.
Yeah, you can take some turns, just say, let's just go a little deeper. We'll share some of the things that are a little bit edgier. And then we commit either way at the end of it that we're going to hug and maybe give each other a foot rub or something, whatever. But
See, it's so affirming to hear from a man what's good for a man and what a man needs to do. And a man needs wants sex, loves sex, pleasure. It's good. It's very affirming. And by the way, I want to go back to talking stick. Could you define that? And
yeah, just look, humans aren't very good at listening to each other. And it's possible that men are worse. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if men are worse. And
they are.
Look, you start telling me something about something in our relationship, I might want to jump to defend myself pretty fast if it seems like I might be doing something wrong. It's a habit. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a habit. And so if it's set up initially this is why talking sticks were invented, I believe. If there's something that I'm holding that represents that I have the space and we have an agreement and a timer is set, and I know I've got clear directions as a man, I know my job is to listen. Maybe I can take some notes so I don't forget everything. And then I know my job at the end of it is maybe to share impact or to recreate you, meaning let me reflect back what I heard so that you know you were heard, and then you'll have a chance to correct me. Like if I know the rules, it's not too hard. But if we're just doing a sharing session and you talk, I may not know the rules. And so I'm going to jump in, and you're not going to get to surrender. You're not going to get to trust and really relax open into my listening. So I think it's just smart to set up the rules of the game at the top.
So a listening stick again is?
Talking stick could just be a stick. You get a toilet brush or a ladle from the kitchen, and whoever's holding the stick is the one that's going to be talking, and then you trade it back and forth. I mean, it might seem silly, but it's so practical. It's a physical reminder that I'm talking now, and hey, I've got the ladle. Zip it.
No, I like that. And I like simplistic rituals, because we think communication is just going to happen, and we think intimacy is.
Yeah, right? No, simplistic rituals. And as a guy, give me rules. Like, tell me how this game's going to go, and I can play it. But otherwise, look out.
Okay. So we'll start wrapping up. It's been a delight, and I wanted to know if you have something you wish to offer the listeners.
Yeah, I do. Firstly, I have my own podcast. It's reasonably new, called Tough Conversations with David Wood. I'd love to have you subscribe. It's all the same link for both of my offers. Is playforreal.life is the website. You can subscribe there. There's also a blueprint on how to have a tough conversation, which you can download for free at the same link. And if something resonated, generally I do a lot of business / life coaching. So I don't do a lot of just life coaching and relationships, but I'm open to it. So if something resonated here and you're a man or a woman or a couple, and you'd like someone to help guide you through some of these practices, I'd love to hear from you. I do discovery sessions if you qualify for a discovery session, I don't charge. It's because of how I find the right people. It's how I find the right people to work with long term. So you can request a session by going to playforreal.life. Click on request a session. There's an assessment, which is really valuable and useful anyway. And then if we do a session, we'll explore each other and see if coaching could have a major impact on your life. And if it does, we'll talk about setting up coaching. And if not, then at least we'll have a great discussion about your life and maybe your relationship.
Thank you, David. And thank you for offering help coaching for couples. Yes.
I love that. And I want to do more of it. The sessions I've done, I'm a great space holder. And so this is the problem when you say people assume communication is going to happen, and it doesn't. But with someone else who can see the whole picture, and you would know this, hold space for it, I love it. I can even be like, hey, Jim, I'm going to need you to hold on that right now because it's not your turn, right? Or Jenny, what's not being said? I love that stuff. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, David. This was fabulous. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
My pleasure. I think this has been the best part of my day. So thanks for reaching out. And this is a thrill for me.
Okay.
You've been listening to Tough Conversations with David Wood. Now it's action time. Mastering your tough conversations will have a major impact on your team, your company, and you as a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. If you're ready, request a discovery session with me at playforreal.life so we can transform your team, your company, and you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to help me spread this message of tough conversations in a very simple way. Just leave a public review at playforreal.life/podcast. And you may hear me read it out loud and thank you live on a future podcast. Now, let's play.